In today's video, we're going to show you how to create a zombie horde. Hey guys, welcome to Studio 2 Magic. My name's Shane and this is Donovan. Ha! Today's video will be a little longer than usual because there's a lot of things to cover to pull off this type of VFX shot. This is a little more of a complex tutorial, but I've broken it down into simple steps. I thought about dividing this tutorial up into multiple videos, but I decided I want all of the steps to be together for you in one video. But the steps are divided into chapters, so you can see in the video progress bar below each of those chapters if you want to look through them. If you learn how to do this VFX shot, you're going to be able to add all kinds of digital characters to your scenes, not just zombies.
Zombies! Why do you want to add zombies? Nobody likes zombies!
What are you talking about? Everybody loves zombies. You know, in a way, you're kind of a zombie.
You need to learn the difference between a puppet and a zombie.
Think about it. A puppet and a zombie are both unliving things that have been animated.
Wow, that hurts.
You know, I was really expecting to find that the zombie horde looked best in the night scenes, or at least in the very low light scenes. But to my surprise, I think it actually looks better in the daytime shots. Now this tutorial, it's not going to give you an up-close, photorealistic zombie horde. But if you use it creatively, you can make them look pretty realistic. Like maybe put a few actors in full zombie makeup in the foreground and have your horde in the background, and maybe even have the background out of focus. But be careful about letting your actors or other things pass in front of your zombie horde, because it can create a lot of masking work to keep your zombies behind them. This tutorial is already long enough, so I'm not going to go into how to do that type of masking. That will just have to be another video. But right now, let's take a quick look at a few things to consider when shooting your background footage. So here's the shot I want to make. I want to have the zombies walking up the street here to me. I've set my shutter speed up high so that I don't get much motion blur. You can deal with motion blur, but the camera does a better job tracking if there's little or no motion blur. Instead of just filming right here and filming the zombies, I want to walk into the shot to give the camera a little bit more to analyze. So I'm going to start from the side. I'm going to kind of walk into it, make sure I have plenty of the street in the shot, and then when I get here, I can start filming my zombies. And then I'm going to go ahead and walk on out of the shot and give the camera a little more data to analyze. For the next part of this tutorial, you're going to need Adobe After Effects and Element 3D from Video Copilot. Those are the programs that are not free, but the other ones that we're going to use, which are Mixamo and Blender, are both free. All right, let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is pretty fun. We're going to choose our zombie. We're going to go to a website called Mixamo. It's at Mixamo.com. That's Mixamo.com. Mixamo is a free website. You don't even have to download it. You just work straight from the web page. You will create an account, but it's easy to do. Then you can start looking through the many models that they have under the Characters tab. In this case, we want a zombie. So we type zombie in the search bar. Some cool zombies come up in a lot of different styles, but we're looking for a zombie that looks like a person who got bit and then turned. So we're going to use this one named Derek, who is a cop zombie, a zombie cop. If you want to upload a model that you made or got from somewhere else, you can do that in Mixamo. You can even do a Google search for free zombie models and find some. We found some that can be bought in TurboSquid and even some free ones there. So if you want to upload your own model, you can. If you upload a rigged model, it will be ready to use, and if you upload one that's not rigged, meaning that it's not set up to be animated yet, just try to upload it in the T-pose like this, and you'll be able to use the auto rigger and add markers to the model's joints, and then the animations will work with it. But for what we're doing, we're just using the cop zombie already in Mixamo. Now we're ready to pick an animation that we want our cop zombie to do, which is walk. We click the animation tab and then type zombie in the search, and we see several options to use. After we click an animation that we like, we adjust the settings to the right until we get him walking just like we want. After we're finished adjusting, it's very important to click the in place box. This will make the zombie walk in place. We will adjust how far the zombie moves when he walks in After Effects later. So that's it for choosing our zombie and animation. Now it's time to download what we created, so we click the download button. The footage that we're going to place behind our zombie is shot at 24 frames per second, so I make sure that I select that. Just make sure it matches your background footage's frame rate. We set the skin to with skin, and we set format to FBX and click download. I select an empty folder to save it in and name it Cop Walking Model and let it finish downloading. I've noticed that on some of the models, the skins or the textures don't make it all the way to Element 3D in After Effects. Some work fine, but occasionally you will get that model in Element 3D that will be just all white with no textures. So I have a little trick that we're going to do here to make sure that the textures are there when you need them. Here's what we do. While still in Mixamo, we click Download again. But this time, instead of the FBX format, we're going to use Collada DAE. We leave the with skin selected and then hit download. This will take a little longer than last time, but when it's ready, you will see that it's created a compressed zipped folder. We change the name of it to Zombie Cop Textures and hit save. Now, we need to open the folder where the compressed file was saved, and we need to right click and extract all, or do whatever you need to unzip it. Now we're going to create another folder that we're going to call Zombie Cop OBJs, and then drag our Zombie Cop Textures folder into it. Now, if we open the Zombie Cop OBJs folder, we will see a folder in there called Zombie Cop Textures. Now when we go to Element 3D, the textures will be there for it to find. So we are done in Mixamo, and we can close that out. Now we'll be using another free program called Blender. This is a program that you'll have to download and install on your computer. Blender is a very powerful and intimidating 3D animation software, but you don't need to be intimidated. We're going to keep this very simple. All we're going to be doing is converting the FBX file into an OBJ sequence. Don't worry about what that means. I'm just going to show you the steps to do it. It's very simple. I'll put a link below for installing Blender. After you've installed it, open it up. You'll see an opening splash screen, and you can just click it and it will disappear. And then just click the cube in the center and hit delete, and it will go away too. So now we just need to go to File, go to Import, then go to FBX. Now locate your folder and the FBX file. We named ours Cop Walking Model. Now import FBX. The zombie will appear in the middle of your screen. You could use the wheel on your mouse to zoom in a little, but I'm not really going to show you how to navigate around Blender because we're just keeping this as simple as possible. At the bottom, in the timeline, we see the keyframes for the animation that we have for this model. If you can't see the keyframes, try clicking one of the bones on the model and they should appear at the bottom. So we slide the playhead to the end of the animation and look at the frame number. In this case, we see that it's frame number 96. But since the last frame and the first frame are the same, I don't want to use frame 96. I want the animation to end on the frame right before it, which is 95. The animation defaults to end on frame 250, but I want to click it and change it to 95 and hit enter. Now our animation is only as long as the walk cycle and will loop around the walk. We can't see the textures in this view, but if you want to see them, you can click here, and after a couple of seconds, the textures will show up. Now we are ready to export this as an OBJ sequence. So we go back up to File and choose Export, and then click Wavefront OBJ. Now, it's very important that we pick the same folder that we have the textures in. So we go to our Zombie Cop OBJs folder and open it. When we open it up, we should see that it contains the textures folder that we put in it earlier. We don't open the textures folder, we want to save our OBJs right here. Now, we need to make sure that we click the box next to Animation. If we don't click this, it will only export one OBJ and not our animation. Next, we click Export OBJ and wait until it finishes. There will be some little numbers changing, but when they all stop on zeros, it should be finished. Now we're ready to go into After Effects. You can open your footage directly into After Effects, but we are using the Premiere Pro interface. So in Premiere Pro, we cut our footage to the length that we want and then right-click it and choose Replace with After Effects Composition. Now my background clip is opened up in a composition in After Effects. Now remember, the beginning of this clip has me walking into the scene and the end has me walking out, but I did this to give After Effects more movement to analyze for a good camera track. If you pretty much stay in the same spot, the analysis may think that you had the camera on a tripod and it won't give you as good of a result, meaning the zombies wouldn't stick to the ground very well. So now let's go ahead and camera track this clip by right-clicking the layer and choose Track and Stabilize, and then choose Track Camera. Our composition is a 4K composition with 4K footage. If your composition size and your footage size don't match, you may need to pre-compose your footage layer before you do the camera track. After it finishes tracking, you will see a lot of tracking points. Ours is a little small, so we're going to increase the track point size to where we can see them a little better. Now, we need to find at least 3 points on the surface plane where we want our zombies to be. We're going to highlight several track points on the ground plane and try to pick ones that create a target that is close to where we want the center of our zombie horde to be. If you can't get a target centered on where you want the zombie horde, it's fine. Just make sure that the target is laying flat on the ground surface. Now we right-click the target and choose Create Solid and Camera. If you click outside of your footage layer, it will stop showing all the track markers. And if you want to see them again, you just select your footage layer and select the 3D camera tracker in the effects, and you can see the track markers again. If we hit play and watch the solid layer, it should be now locked to the ground plane. Now we want to switch from our active camera view to the top view. When we zoom out, we can see our camera and might even be able to see our track solid, but it's not even close to the little view screen rectangle. I like for the center of my zombie horde to be in the center of that view screen. Even though this is from the top, it just keeps everything simpler and easier to manipulate later. So, we want to find a way to scale our whole scene down and move it so that the track solid is in the middle. If we just drag the solid to the middle and move our camera around, it will mess up the tracking information. So I found a better way to do it. So what we want to do is create a new null object and name it world null. Next, we want to make the world null a 3D object. If you don't see the box to make it a 3D null, you may need to hit the toggle switches button at the bottom. Now, we select our camera and pick whip it to the world null. And then we select our track solid and also pick whip it to the world null. Now we open the transform properties under the world null and scale it down, and then use position to move it to where the track solid is in the middle of the view screen and the camera is about 1 view screen width below the current view screen. Basically, if you could stack one more view screen at the bottom of this view screen, our camera would be at the bottom edge of it. The reason we want this all scaled to about this size is because it will help with the lights casting shadows later. If we leave this scene huge, it's more difficult to get good shadows under all the zombies. Now we want to change from our top view to the left or right view. From this angle, I can see that our track solid is not laying flat. So we're going to adjust that also in our world null. We adjust the Z rotation until the solid appears to be laying very horizontally. Again, making this all nice and level just helps keep it simple and easier to work with. So after we adjust it, we look again from the top to make sure it still looks good, and then switch our view back to active camera. We'll hit play again and make sure that our track solid is locked well to our ground plane. Now, one more very important thing to do before we bring our zombies in is to unlink our track solid and unlink our camera. If we don't unlink the track solid, we're not going to be able to attach our zombies to the ground layer. So we click the drop down for both layers and select none. And now we're ready for some zombies. We create a new solid and name it Zombies. Next, we add Video Copilot's Element 3D to the zombie layer. Now in the Effects Control tab, we open up Element and we click Scene Setup. The first thing that we're going to create is the shadow catcher. This is a flat plane that will only display the shadows of the zombies that get cast upon it. If you know for sure that you're not going to use shadows, then you don't have to do this, but most of the time you'll probably want some level of shadows. So we click the Create button and select the flat plane. Then we go to Scale under Transform and set it to like 10,000, something that's bigger than your whole zombie horde. Now, under the plane model, we open the drop down and click the default material and click the gear symbol, and then we turn on the matte shadow box. The plane disappears, but it's still there. It will just now only show shadows that are cast upon it. So let's close this group and rename it to Shadow Catcher. Now, we want to get a zombie in here, so we'll right click in the space under the ground plane and select New Group Folder and change it from Group 1 to Group 2. Group 1 is our ground plane. Group 2 will be our first zombie. We right-click the group folder and rename it to Zombie 1. Now, making sure that the zombie on Group 2 is selected, we go to Import, but not the import in the corner. We need to go to File and then select Import and choose 3D Sequence. If you don't use 3D Sequence, you'll get a single unmoving zombie instead of our animated zombie. Now, find your folder with the OBJ files in it. We named ours Zombie Cop OBJs. When we open the folder, we see all of our OBJ files, but we should also have the textures folder in there too. If it's not there, I suggest you put it there. I know that if it's not in there for this particular cop zombie, the textures don't get loaded and the zombie is just white. We select the OBJ file with the lowest number. It's probably your first OBJ file. After clicking the first OBJ, we hit Open. On the window that opens, we just go with the defaults and hit OK. And we can't see anything. Well, he's actually there, but he's just really tiny. So we go to the transform properties and choose normalize size. Now we can see the zombie with the textures, but he's being cut in half by the ground plane. Well, we want him standing on the ground plane. So in the same transform properties, we're going to change the alignment from model center to bottom. Now he should be standing on the ground plane. There's one other adjustment that I like to make sometimes to these models. There's a glossiness that appears on the outer edges of these models. It's a little too much for my taste, so we go to the drop down under the model and reveal all of the materials used. In this case, we only have 2, but you might have more. We click the first material, and under basic settings, we're going to adjust the environment multiplier. We're going to set it way down to about 15 or 20. We do this for each material. It makes the dark parts of the model look really dark, but we'll adjust that later when we add lights to our scene. Now, we have a zombie standing on a shadow catcher, and we can click OK and close Element 3D. And our zombie appears in the scene now. Your zombie might not be visible depending on your camera track, so if you don't see him, go ahead and proceed with the next steps and he'll probably appear when we reposition him. So, once again, make sure your track solid is not linked to anything. We want our zombie to be centered on our track solid. So here's what we do. We select the zombie layer, and under Element in the effects, we go down and open the World Transform drop-down. At the bottom, we click the Create button under the Create World Transform Null. Now we have a new null that can be moved in scale and will affect all of our 3D stuff.
3D stuff?
We want the World Transform Null to be exactly where our track solid is. So what we want to do is copy and paste the position and orientation properties. So we go ahead and open up the drop-down under track solid, and then open the drop-down under transform. Then we do the same thing under the World Transform Null. Be careful not to use the World Null for this. Make sure it's the World Transform Null. Now we go to Position under the track solid and push and hold the Control button and hit C. This is the shortcut on a PC for copy. Then I go to Position on the World Transform Null and click it to highlight it, and then use Control V to paste those properties. Then select Orientation under the track solid and again use Control C to copy it, and then select Orientation under the World Transform Null and use Control V to paste those properties. Now our zombie is lying on his back. But to fix that, we just go to the X rotation right below orientation and set it to 90. Now, if we select our World Transform Null again, we'll see that the blue arrow is pointing a little bit to the right. It's probably different in your shot, but the main thing is that the blue arrow needs to be pointed in the direction that we want our zombie to go as he walks. So under the World Transform Null, we're going to adjust the Y rotation until the blue arrow points the direction we want the zombie horde to go. In our case, it's basically towards the camera, right down the center of the street. Our zombie is about 12 foot tall right now. I want him to be a little more human size, so we again click the zombie layer and go to the element effects. We see that there are 5 groups that we can open up, but our zombie is in group 2, so make sure that you're always in the right group for where your zombie is. Our ground plane is in group 1. The other zombies will be in the other groups later. But we're going to open up the drop down in group 2. So we go ahead and open the drop down for particle replicator and also the drop down for particle look. Under particle look, the first thing we see is particle size. So let's adjust that until our zombie looks about the right height. Now let's go back up and look under our particle replicator drop down. Under particle count, we're going to choose how many instances of this zombie we want. So we're going to use say 16. But you can use whatever number you want. Just remember, higher numbers will make the computer work slower, so keep that in mind. Next, we set replicator shape to plane because we're only going to be moving our zombies in X and Z space. We don't want these to fly because flying zombies would suck or be really awesome. That could be an awesome B movie, Attack of the Flying Zombies. Okay, under replicator effects, we have a scatter drop down. We adjust the X scatter and the Z scatter until we get a zombie group that we like. You can also adjust the random seed just right under there and have the zombies randomly rescattered. Now, if we watch a little bit of our footage, we see that the zombies are walking in perfect synchronization. They're synchronized. It's like they're marching or something. And we want to randomize that. So under particle look and under baked animation, we change the setting from loop to random loop. Now they're out of sync and look much more randomized. It would look even better if they weren't quite all the same height and the same size. So right under where we adjusted their size is an adjustment called Particle Size Randomizer. We set ours to 8.6 to create a few variations in their size. Now, we want to make this group of zombies move forward as they walk. So we go to the spot in our video where we want to begin our move. For us, it's at second number 2. It's not the very beginning of our footage because for the first 2 seconds, I'm just walking into position so that the camera would have more data to track. So at second number 2, under group 2 in Element 3D, we click the stopwatch on the Z position. Now we move in the timeline to second number 7. And adjust the Z position to move the zombies closer to the camera, as if they just walked forward. Since the stopwatch is turned on, this will automatically create a new keyframe. So we play a little bit of the footage to see if the zombies' feet stick to the ground pretty good. If their feet are sliding forward, then I moved them a little too far. If they're sliding backwards, then I didn't quite move them far enough. If you want to see your keyframes in the timeline, you can go into Element 3D and hold down Alt and click the stopwatch for the Z position. The stopwatch should remain highlighted, but the keyframe should open up in the timeline. This will take a little trial and error to get your zombies to look like they're walking correctly across the ground. And be careful not to add new keyframes. Keep making your adjustments on the last keyframe, then check your footage. And if you need to adjust it again, go to the last keyframe again. Once we get them walking correctly across the ground, we can move on. Okay, now we can add some lights and try to match the lighting of our scene and get our shadows working. So we right click in the blank area here and then select New and then Light. We're going to create an ambient light first, just to brighten the darker parts of our zombies. We click OK and the light is created. We open up the drop down under the light and adjust the brightness until we like it, which for us is about 59. Now we're going to add another new light, just like we did before. Only this time we're going to change the light type to parallel light. Set the intensity to about 150 and the fall off to none. And make sure Cast Shadows is selected. So now our light is in the scene, but before we start positioning it, we're going to turn on the shadows in Element 3D. So we select our zombie layer and in Element we go down to Render Settings and open up the drop down. Then under there we see Shadows and we open that drop down also. Click the box that says Enable. We can choose a shadow mode now. I use shadow mapping because I have more control and I can soften the shadows more easily. Now under the parallel light drop down, turn the shadow size all the way up. This will increase how many of your zombies will be casting shadows, which will hopefully be all of them. If you have to have some that aren't casting shadows, just try to make sure that they're way in the background. Okay, if right now on your screen it's casting some really weird and wrong shadows, don't worry about it yet. As we move the light around, it should fix it. So now we want to adjust the position and target of our light. We select our parallel light layer and look closely at our footage to see which way the shadows are lying. In our case, the shadows are running to the left of the screen and away from the camera. So we're going to try to match this. We change our view from active camera to top and make sure that our parallel light is selected in the layer panel. So we move our light around and also move the target around to where the light is pointing away from the camera. When you're moving the light around, instead of clicking one of the arrows to move the light, click near the light, trying not to hit any of those arrows, and then you can just drag it around on the screen. Now we switch to 2 views so we can move our light around and see how our shadows are being affected. We click in the window that is the top-down view and start moving our light and target and seeing how it affects these shadows on the zombies. You might also want to switch to a front view and make sure that your target is between your light and your zombies. In other words, make sure the light isn't pointed away from them. If some of your zombies have shadows and some don't, try moving the light position closer to the zombies that don't have shadows. This is something you're just going to have to play with a little bit, but since we scaled the size of our camera and trackers, scaled the whole scene down, it should work pretty good. You may have to continue to switch around between top view and front view to get the light the way you need it. After we get it looking pretty good, we switch back from 2 views to 1 view and set our view to active camera. Now, the shadow edges look a bit jagged, but if I select my zombie layer and go back into Element 3D and go down to the shadows, we can open the drop down under Shadow Maps and change the map size to 4096. This already cleans up the shadows a lot. The other thing you can do is play with the blur radius. You can use this to soften the shadows if you need to, but we're setting it at about 1 and leaving ours pretty sharp since it's in full sunlight. Now we want to adjust our shadow's darkness, and we're going to do that in the parallel light layer. So we open the drop downs in our light layer until we see shadow darkness. We adjust it until the zombie shadows are as dark as the real shadows in the clip. One bonus trick that can be done to tint the shadows a little bit is to select the zombie layer and then go into Element Effects and go down below the shadow settings to Matte Shadow. Open it up and make sure that it's enabled, then adjust the shadow tint. Our shadows seem to have a little bit of a blue to them. So we click the color box and then choose a blue color. If we go down in the blackest color and then raise it up just a little bit into the blue, our shadows get a little bit of a blue tint to them. After you match the color pretty good, click OK. Now you have your first group of zombies walking down the street or wherever. You can go ahead and repeat these steps again with different zombies and walk cycles for groups 3, 4, and 5, and you can add a lot of diversity to your horde. Oh yeah, we should go ahead and hide the track solid layer because we don't really want to see it anymore. After we watch a little bit of the shot, I can see something else that I'd like for us to add. These zombies are just a little too sharp. So we select the zombie layer and go to the effects and close the drop down for Element 3D. And then add a Gaussian blur and adjust it to be about the same blurriness as the ground under the zombie's feet. In our case, it was about 2. I also like to add CC Force Motion Blur and set the shutter angle to around 100 to 120. You might need more or less depending on how shaky your footage is. We went with 120. So now we're going to render this and watch it so that we can really check it and see what we're getting. Now I'm going to continue to add some zombies and build diversity in my horde. And as I said, this will work best if the horde is kind of in the distance because people won't notice the repeats and the duplications as easily. But using drab looking zombies helps them all blend together a little better. And here's one other bonus tip. I noticed that my zombie cop was easy to pick out because of the dark pockets on the shirt and the shoulder tabs. But if we go to the OBJ folder that we have all the OBJ files in, we also have our texture files in there. If we open the texture folder and find the diffuse texture, we can open it in Photoshop. We're going to make some alterations to this file, so you might want to make a copy of the original somewhere in case you want to change it back. We can use the clone tool to erase those dark pockets and shoulders. We can also use the burn tool to make the clothes look more dingy. Once we finish making all of our alterations, we can save our file and it will all automatically update in After Effects. You can make all kinds of changes here, including adding more gore or blood, or even changing the zombie's face. It's really a chance for you to be able to kind of create your own zombie. So that concludes today's video. If you made it to the end here, I'd love for you just to comment below, made it. I know some of you don't have Element 3D from Video Copilot, so I'm thinking about rendering some zombie hordes at different angles with different lighting setups that you could just drag and drop into your own scenes. I'll let you know when I have those available for free download. Just subscribe and click the bell icon so you'll get the notification when it's ready. Thanks for watching. We really do appreciate all of our viewers, and we will see you next time.